How on earth did BZ Watchdog find us, and is there any end in sight?
Okay, BZ Watchdog. So, BZ Watchdog was alerted to the city of Hillsborough because of an interaction that someone he knew had with one of our police officers. This person is not a journalist. Journalists do fact checking for a lot of things. I don't really look at all this stuff, but from what I have seen, it is the vast majority of things listed as facts are not factually true. An accusation of widespread theft at the outlet mall. He got this based on an open records request where he requested, anything with theft or sexual harassment. So one of the things that we sent him was an email that I had received from a professional association offering training on sexual harassment. There sure was an email to me about sexual harassment, right? And yes, we have to turn over our texts. A journalist would contact the city and would go, hey, what can you tell me about this apparent theft? Someone could argue with me, but I just don't think it's the city's role to go back and forth with this person.
A journalist is not defined by whether City Hall likes them. A journalist is defined by gathering information, verifying records, and asking questions. But then City Manager Megan Henderson, speaking in her official capacity, decided to defame me. This wasn't an opinion. That was a false statement of fact made by a public official designed to discredit a critic by declaring that I am not a journalist. She claims she doesn't look at most of my content, so how would she know whether it's factual? That's lie number one. It is not my fault when the city manager refuses to answer those questions truthfully, dodges them entirely, or fails to issue an official statement. That's lie number two. Then comes lie number three, taking my reporting, altering what I said, spinning it for an image control, and pushing that narrative in coordination with the Chamber of Commerce leadership. Therefore, I'm formally requesting that Megan Henderson and the City of Hillsborough issue a public apology immediately, and that future disagreements be handled with facts, records, and official statements, not whispers at private events. Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Tyranny, corruption, extortion.
Sunshine is the best disinfectant. BZ Watchdog News Network.
All right, Watchdogs, buckle up. You know how some folks think if they whisper something behind closed doors, it just magically disappears? Well, not on my watch. So apparently in a private little Chamber of Commerce gathering on video, the RSVP only, pat each other on the back type of meeting, City Manager Megan Henderson decided it was a great idea to run her mouth and make false statements about me. Defamation? Oh, we're going to call it what it is. Now, since we hadn't been to a council meeting in a minute, I figured let's remind them something very important. I'm still here. And I walked in demanding one simple thing, a public apology. Spoiler alert, I didn't get it. What I did get, a whole lot of nervous energy. And let's just say, Megan didn't look too comfortable when sunlight hit the room. So, here's the deal. This can all go away with a simple public apology. That's it. Easy, clean, done. But when arrogance meets ignorance, taxpayers usually end up footing the bill. Because while they were hoping I'd disappear, I've been busy. Very busy. I've been juggling projects, putting chess pieces on the board, and playing this game strategically. Litigation isn't something you rush. Criminal complaints? You calculate those. Civil suits? You build those brick by brick. I'm currently consulting with my legal team about filing a defamation suit against Megan in her official and individual capacity for statements made while acting under color of authority. And that's just one piece of the board. There are other city officials who may soon find out that strategy beats panic every single time. I haven't gone anywhere. I've just been preparing. And for those watching from City Hall thinking this blows over, it doesn't. It builds and it builds and it builds.
So smash that like button, drop a comment, share this everywhere, follow on YouTube and Facebook for the receipts, documents, records, real-time updates. Because when we expose corruption, we don't whisper about it in private meetings. We put it on the record. Sunlight is still and will always be the best disinfectant. And Watchdogs today, we're opening the blinds.
All right. I'm gonna press you. A journalist is not defined by whether City Hall likes them. A journalist is defined by gathering information, verifying records, and asking questions, and publishing facts for the public. And more importantly, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, written by the Founding Fathers, does not protect journalism only when it's polite. It exists specifically to protect criticism of the government, especially when officials stop listening to the people they were elected to represent and start deciding what they think the public wants instead. Now, after 2 months of not attending council meetings, I generally thought I'd be done with Hillsborough. Maybe an occasional story, maybe nothing at all. But then City Manager Megan Henderson, speaking in her official capacity, decided to defame me at a private RSV-only Chamber of Commerce event held by Lynette Harold on January 20th by declaring that I am not a journalist. This wasn't an opinion. That was a false statement of fact made by a public official designed to discredit a critic. And it gets worse. She claims she doesn't look at most of my content. So how would she know whether it's factual? That's lie number one. Next, she suggested I don't fact find or ask questions. That's rich, considering my reporting is built almost entirely on public records requests and calling and asking her questions all the time. It's recorded. It is not my fault when the city manager refuses to answer those questions truthfully, dodges them entirely, or fails to issue an official statement. That's lie number two. Then comes lie number three, taking my reporting, altering what I said, spinning it for an image control, and pushing that narrative in coordination with the Chamber of Commerce leadership in a private setting before running it to the internet to damage my credibility and very limited income I earn publishing. That is not transparency. That is reputation laundering. And under the law, that is defamation. So let me be very clear. Criticism is not fake news. Public records are not fake news. Uncomfortable facts are not fake news. What is unacceptable is a city manager using her position to attack a journalist instead of addressing the substance of the reporting. Therefore, I'm formally requesting that Megan Henderson and the City of Hillsborough issue a public apology immediately, and that future disagreements be handled with facts, records, and official statements, not whispers at private events. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and if that makes people uncomfortable, then maybe the problem isn't with the journalist.
Mayor and Council, the purpose of this item is to clarify and create a process for the use of public spaces by events that are not sponsored by the City of Hillsborough. So, for example, Farmers Market has operated in downtown for a number of years, and the use of public spaces, while, as in the case of the Farmers Market, create a public good and benefit. They offer goods and services available for sale for the city that would not otherwise be available, and they offer vendors the opportunity to sell goods and services without the need for a brick and mortar store. But there's not anything in writing that describes what the expectation is of the market or of us. So if we are conferring a public benefit, and we are, this is granting the use of public rights of way for a private enterprise, there needs to be some kind of documentation that explains how did this come to be, what is the duration, what are the expectations, what are the parties responsible for, all of those things. I mean, I think one of the things that we have learned over the last year or so is that we don't always have things written down that are just understood. And in an effort for there to be clarity and understanding and accountability and transparency on the part of the city, we need to have some of these things written down, and it needs to be explainable. How does this work? And so what staff is proposing is, on an annual basis, entity or an individual that wants to use a public right of way to do some kind of a market would send us a letter. Hey, we are the downtown farmers market. This is what we propose to do. This is the number of vendors that we have. This is the space that we want to use. It would explain all the things that they want to do. Staff would review it and then issue an approval for that period of time, and that would happen on an annual basis.
Council, any questions for Ms. Henderson?
I'd like to clarify that this would go into effect for fiscal year 2027.
No, this would go into effect immediately. Now, that's subject to council approval. The proposal is that beginning this year for fiscal 2027, the letters of request would be due in December for the following year. Because, for example, growers and things need a lot of lead time. In this case, we would request the letter this month for the coming summer. But if council chose to do so, they could waive that and put it into effect for the following year.
So it would be for the entire summer. They put in there, would be for the rest of the summer, this summer.
Right, that's the idea. So it's again, if we're using the downtown farmers market as the example, I think it started in March. Okay. So May to October.
So they have to do that, they'll be in April, unless we have something.
They would submit a letter and they would say, hey, again, we're the downtown farmers market. This is what we do. This is how many vendors we have. This is the space we want. They would get approval to go and have it be defined for that specific year.
And Megan, this would include all public owned property, including parks?
This is specifically for public rights of way.
So courthouse.
So that does not include, it does not include the courthouse lawn. This is the public rights of way. It would not include parks.
Go ahead. All we do is let's okay, council, any further discussion? I may make a suggestion that, is there some sort of committee that is planned on being formed to look at these regulations and see how they're actually going to work out before we implement them?
So the proposal is for the market, so in this case the farmers market, to write a letter and say, this is what we do. I'm not aware of anything that would cost any money or require the market to know exactly how many vendors they're going to have or any of that. But they would say, last year we had X number of vendors. We think we'll be about the same or hopefully a little better. I mean, as much information as they have. Just something that would enable staff to look at the application and say, okay, yes, you need this much space and make a recommendation. I think it sounds though that there's anxiety and uncertainty. And that's exactly what we're trying to reduce by having a clear policy. So among the things that the council can do, the council could take no action on this tonight. The market doesn't start until May, and nobody wants there to not be a farmer's market this summer. That's not anybody's hope or desire. And so first of all, there shouldn't be any suspense about whether you guys have space this summer. And that being the case, there's not an immediate sense of urgency other than that it's a good practice that we want to get started as soon as we can. So staff is going to recommend that we have a policy.
No, I think a policy is appropriate. more wondering is how it's actually going to be implemented. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
so essentially, per the draft policy that's in front of you, the proposed market would submit their request and they would say, we need a space of X by X, and here's how we propose to use that space, and then they would be given.
So who's going to man every Saturday morning at the, if it's now going to become a policy where it's going to turn into something we're going to police, who's going to be down there to, oh no, you only get this much space and we got this other half of the lot for somebody else, so who's going to be down there on Saturday mornings to monitor that?
Well, you wouldn't expect to have it more than once. I don't expect that we would have a relationship with any market that would do it one week and then not do it right the following week. I don't.
But I mean, there's going to be that weekend where I'm assuming the way I picture this in my head is some vendors are going to want to come out on a certain weekend, and now we've got 2 people down there wanting to utilize the same space, but who is going to be there?
Well, that's the whole point. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's why I'm trying to figure out if not a better solution would be, okay, have the farmer's market apply and let us get that application and let's see how that actually looks on paper and how we would begin to implement that. And then starting January 1, 2027 is when obviously they would reapply again in December. And then starting January 1st would be when whatever final things are agreed upon after we look at something and submit, whoever wants to make submits, we can then adopt something like that.
So obviously y'all can do whatever you want. It is hard for me to imagine the need, even if we had a second market apply in the course of the current fiscal year, it's hard for me to imagine the need for there's a lot of space downtown. I can't imagine that we would put anybody so close together that there would be a conflict.
I'm part of those where I want 20 feet and you're crowding in my 19,
In a multiple vendor environment where people are next to each other on the same street, yes, that happens, and we're there to police it because that's typically during city events. I mean, I guess I'm imagining if there was a second thing, it wouldn't be on the same block. If the overall concern is let's get this right with the group that we know we have and are concerned about protecting, before we open it up to any additional uncertainty by offering any other opportunities. I mean, I think that's a step.
And that's why I said, have them apply. That way we have something we can look at and go, how does that fit within what we've laid out? And this may be a working document that needs to be changed.
I would expect it.
Yeah, and that way there may be some expectations that we can tell them, hey, look, just know next year, here's what we got to have, A, B, and C, this is what we need. That way everybody's on the same page come January. I have a feeling that when January rolls around, there will be a lot of confusion if that didn't work out before.
Ms. Audrey, can you tell me the most vendors you had this past summer?
And that's really why I do.
Well, I think you should be here because this does pertain to the farmer's market. I think you have the farmer's market has a vested interest in seeing.
Anybody who wants to be present on the market. This is very.
Councilor, is everybody in agreement maybe not to take any action on this? And it's,
I make a motion that we table this.
or table or no action?
No action.
No action.
You don't have
This
to,
time.
there won't be a motion, you just.
And I'm gonna ask that you go ahead and fill out, give her the requirements, let her go ahead and fill it out, okay? And let us use the farmer's market as a guide for what our requirements are gonna be. So that way we ensure that everybody, I guess for lack of a better term, everybody's treated fairly when it comes to the use of it.
And also, I'm tired. I mean,
Would you like us to bring back something at next meeting that covers this year, the farmer's market?
Well, Councilman, anybody have a comment on that? I wouldn't say we're gonna do anything this year. No.
Okay, so we're just gonna continue to be unpapered.
No,
Maybe with our suggestion.
Bring it to tables.
The only thing I'd like to
Shop it with them.
The only suggestion I might want to present is that there is a grandfathering clause for the farmer's market and any paperwork that you're doing, and based on what she shared, until it's no longer a going concern. So maybe a dedicated space, since they're the ones who started the trend, some kind of grandfather clause for them that would help the situation, knowing that everybody here, it seems, wants to keep the farmer's market where it is.
Council, any comments on that?
A grandfather clause typically means that there's already an agreement in place, and since there's no agreement in place, that may be a little hard to.
Yeah, just establish something of that nature so that it continues to stay the verbal agreement that it has been for however many years it's been that way.
And I think that's where part of the confusion lies, is what was that verbal agreement? People that made that verbal agreement many years ago aren't around anymore so I think that's.
I'm here.
Well, I think that's one of them that still needs to be on paper, but not to effect.
I don't understand. Well, I mean, they've been doing this for, well, ever since I've been here. And they're only taking up one spot around the courthouse. Is that causing an issue with people? I don't understand.
Megan, you want to answer that?
I think that the purpose is to have a written description of what everybody can expect. That's not to change what people can expect.
But I don't understand why all of a sudden this is.
If somebody wanted to come to the city and utilize that space, and you're gonna say, all right, there's another farmer's market there, but we're not charging them.
And they would say, on what basis?
That's exactly.
Where was there an action taken that conferred that benefit? How do you point to the authority?
Okay, so it'd be like what she's saying, is you're gonna have a contract with them, grandfathering them in. They're gonna be there from May to October on every Saturday.
It's unlikely that we would have a separate contract with the farmer's market. We need to have a process. Okay, let me not speak for the council. What I could see happening is a process that says, here's the application process, and note, the existing Hillsborough Farmers Market is the long-standing tenant or the long-standing user, whatever the term is in the document, of this space. It is understood that they have first right of refusal. But that's gonna include, though, that they're gonna have to do the things that they have to do. And those are the things that Mrs. Autry diligently does. There may be a time, I hope that day never comes, when Mrs. Autry wins the lottery and moves to Bermuda. And the farmer's market is run by somebody who's not as awesome. And that person doesn't, make sure that communication is fair and make sure that vendors abide by the things that they're supposed to abide by. We all like what we have now. We all like what we have now. We need to document it now while things are good. And we are very willing to take a step back and say, let's make sure that everybody feels protected by what's being proposed. We don't want to create anxiety, and there's ample room to put the language in there that removes the threat of uncertainty if that's creating anxiety on the part of the market. We don't want that.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this all coming about because of possible somebody else coming in wanting to use it, and I'm not saying that's happening, but to prevent somebody from coming coming in, wanting to use it, and being able to say, you don't have anything in writing with them, and then trying to do some litigation to have the right to come in and push the farmer's market out.
I don't see that exact scenario, but I do see a scenario. I do see a scenario where another group wants to come in and somebody has exclusive rights, and they don't have access to it as well. That's right, and it's not.
And it has to be in writing, it can't be verbal, because, so this would help prevent future possible in big letters, but possible future litigation with the city about giving our farmers market exclusive rights.
I think
I'm trying to understand why it needs to be in writing when that is, is that what we're trying to prevent, is somebody else coming in and trying to push it?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I've had a lot of conversations in the last several months about the need to have things in writing.
Yes. Okay.
We are used to conducting a lot of business in person. We're used to having a lot of conversations, and there are lots of good reasons for that. You get a lot done when you just have a conversation with somebody, right? The problem is, if you're the government, and there's not a record of that agreement, there's not a record of who made that agreement or what authority they had when they did that, then it can be called into question whether it was legitimate or whether it was true or whether, or any of that. And we are learning, we are trying to get better day by day, even though it means that we then have to stop what we're doing and write up a policy and we send it to you and you're like, holy crap, that means we've got to do extra. I mean, nobody wants the extra, nobody's asking for the extra headache, but it's appropriate for us as the government to keep records of our decisions.
Right.
And to be able to be transparent about that. If nothing is written down, it's hard to be transparent. And we're trying to get better.
But there's no other examples except us.
But, okay,
That's not a
in
bad
your
thing.
example and in your discussion, you've talked about these people that are no longer here. That's the whole problem, but he's not.
And Judge Lewis, we talked about that. Judge Lewis has
Well, and Dana's still here.
Yes.
But still, the majority of the people that you're talking about.
And that's why I really
For
think we have to agree with the
2013,
writing.
no longer
I
here.
just think that this is a farmer's market agreement. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying written would actually help me, I agree. But this is not a public space thing. This is a farmer's market issue at the moment.
It's a public space. It's a road. It's a city street. So it is a public space.
It doesn't matter who occupies it, it stays in an area. Go ahead.
Yeah, what happened a few years ago is we changed finance directors. And our finance director said it was inconsistent with governmental accepted accounting practices for us to be managing money for an outside entity. And that was the thing. It wasn't not a desire to be helpful. It's that our auditors said you can't do this. So that I just want to be clear that there was no intent not to be supportive. That was the limit that we were given.
I have to be able to pay my.
Council, so I'm under the same understanding. In regards to item number 7, there will be no action taken tonight. Good? Okay, all right. Thank you, Ms. Archer. Okay, next item on the agenda here, deliberate on the city manager.
Excuse me,
Before we move on, I just have a question about agenda item 7. From my perspective, reading this, I see it as an opportunity for others to come in, like Bonds Alley and other recurring events like Churro Fest. There were days where the courthouse was shut down for community events and it was whole community events, and it was more frequent than we see it now. So, although this may seem like an obstacle, I see the necessity and that it could be more helpful than you think it will be, honestly. And that wasn't my initial impression walking in. But I'm just curious, for events like Bonds Alley that are recurring, same process or something like that, or is this something completely different? Because if it is the case, that could be a great opportunity for the city.
Theoretically, because Bronx Alley is an event that takes place in public right of way, they would follow the same procedure.
I think it also helps keep the calendar aligned with everybody, so everybody knows what events are and who's got to work together on those days. You heard Ms. Autry talk about having the farmer's market, and then all of a sudden there was a city festival that weekend, Autumn Fest or something like that, where maybe she didn't feel like she was given adequate space. That way it's already outlined what you can expect for that weekend, and that's what you do. Okay. City manager's report.
All right. We'll go to the next one, please. Yes. So we may have a couple new people. I always like to say when we have new people, we have 8 strategic goals. The first council meeting of the month, we go through the first 4 goals. The second council meeting of the month, we do the second 4 goals. So this is goals 1 through 4. The first of those is to ensure responsible and equitable growth. The main issue impacting us growth-wise that we're working on right now is water. And there's not a whole lot new to report today. To recap where we are, there is the need to reopen the study to look at raising the level of Lake Aquila. So there's a study that looks at the use of that lake basin, a poly reallocation study. A study was done many years ago. The Corps of Engineers now feels that that work is sort of outdated and needs to be updated if a project is going to be done that would add to the water available for the city of Hillsborough. So for that reason, for us to do a project at Aquila, we have to reopen that study. We are sort of back to the drawing board with Army Corps of Engineers. Our friends at Aquila Water Supply are working on communications with the Corps of Engineers so that we can try to encourage them to reopen that study. The next phase is to make better use of our existing water. We've got some different options for that. And then finally, in the reallocation of Lake Whitney, it does seem like the recommended alternative is going to include a fair amount of water for municipal use, and we have a good shot at getting some of that water. There's a lot of water in Lake Whitney. It wouldn't take a lot to really help Hillsborough. The problem with that is the water in Lake Whitney is saline, and so we need to have some kind of desalination component in order for us to use it. So that's kind of an evaluation situation where we need to go through with our engineers. Item 2, foster transparency and connection. I think the only real news here is that we're working on some new technology options to record and post council meetings. We've had some issues with that and are looking at some different options so that the sound quality is better on the recordings that we're able to do. Skipping item 3 because this is the city manager, Tony Kane, will circle back and back cleanup. Item 4 is to deliver efficient and effective government. Lots of stuff going on with the comprehensive plan process. So the downtown plan has been going really well. We've had a lot of public input. There are a handful of property owners considering projects in conference with some of the folks that we brought in to help advise on that. The comp planning team is working on our future land use maps, which are a huge component of the comprehensive plan. And there is an upcoming site visit February 25th and 26th. So 3 weeks from tomorrow and Thursday. That will include 2 public engagement meetings. So Wednesday night and Thursday at noon. So the public will have a couple of different opportunities to come and give input during that process. During the day on Wednesday, there's a charm workshop, and that is a workshop convened by folks that work with Texas A&M, and it's for planning community resiliency and disaster preparedness. So it's not exactly the same as the hazard mitigation plan. This is more of a community workshop, and will include Hillsborough and also Whitney countywide. So that's happening during the day on Wednesday, and then Thursday evening there will be a meeting with council, the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, and Planning and Executive Commission. Human resources, policy updates on various topics, and as reported in previous council meetings, we have a process improvement person that is independent observer, essentially. They do not report to Public Works, but they're observing Public Works so that they can review our operations and make recommendations on how we can be more efficient and cost effective and try to get the best bang for the citizens' dollar. They're currently reviewing water department operations and software. Upcoming events, we've got Fire and Ice February 21st at the Rusted Chandelier. Tickets for that event are on sale now. They sell out, so please buy your tickets. And proceeds from that event will benefit downtown projects. I think that's it for me. Before I kick it over to Tony, does anybody have any questions for me on any of the foregoing?
All right, watchdogs. Well, there you have it. So apparently, City Manager Megan Henderson sat through all that First Amendment Constitution training. You know, the kind cities love to brag about like it's a merit badge. Then she left early and came back acting like she learned absolutely nothing. Because why absorb the lesson when you can just skip to the part where you attack the messenger? And let's talk about the greatest hits from this week's episode of City Hall, the musical. He's not a journalist. Oh, okay, cool. Since when did Hillsborough City Hall become the Journalism Licensing Board? I must have missed the agenda item where they voted to install Megan as the editor-in-chief of reality. Journalists do fact-checking. You're right, Megan. That's why I use public records, emails, documents, and what y'all literally hand over under the law. But apparently in Hillsborough, fact-checking means calling City Hall for permission to report what City Hall already wrote. I don't really look at all his stuff, but it's mostly not true. That's my favorite. I don't watch it, but I know it's wrong. That's like saying I've never been to the restaurant, but the food is terrible. And then we roll into tonight's city council meeting where Megan Henderson went full panic mode. Because once the room starts asking real questions, the PR script stops working and suddenly everybody's confused, concerned, and needing clarity. Now on to the farmers market issue. Listen, I understand the city wanting a contract and a process. Fine. Paperwork exists for a reason. But what I'm watching is this. The Auditors are saying Megan hasn't been truthful in what she's been telling them. And the second we start putting sunlight on it, it sure feels like the city manager is trying to make it so difficult that somebody else, maybe somebody else connected, maybe somebody else friendly, maybe somebody else that fits the City Hall social circle, can slide right in and take over the space like we've seen with everything else. So let me ask you this, watchdogs. How many of you think this is just about policy? And how many of you think this is about covering her ass after the mayor had to step in and call out the obvious problems? Because I called out lies. The Auditors are calling out lies. And the response from City Hall is more spin, more whispers, and more avoidance. And speaking of avoidance, where is my apology? Where is the official apology from the council? Where is the apology from Megan Henderson in her official capacity for making statements designed to discredit me instead of addressing the facts? I'm still here. I'm still recording. I'm still requesting documents. And I'm still going to keep dragging the truth into the sunlight, whether City Hall likes it or not. So do me a favor. Smash that like button. Drop a comment. Tell me if you think she's lying and why. Share this everywhere, because the only thing corruption hates more than questions is an audience. Subscribe on YouTube and follow on Facebook for real-time updates, receipts, and records. And if you want to reach out to City Manager Megan Henderson, her contact info is down below. Politely, professionally, and directly. So you can address your concerns about how your city is being run. Want to keep supporting the work? Grab some merch, become a channel member, or leave a donation. Links are below. Because sunlight is still the best disinfectant. And if that makes certain people uncomfortable, maybe the problem isn't the journalist. I'll see you in the next video, watchdogs.
Tyranny, corruption, extortion.
Sunshine is the best disinfectant. BZ Watchdog News Network.